Thanks for the transition.
Someone help me with this. I'm sorry. Oh. Okay. Hi everyone. Can everybody hear me? Awesome. So my name is Jasmine. Thank you, Damien. My pronouns are she, her, hers. And today I'm going to talk about hybrid pairing. I thought I'd make it super fun and cool with a bunch of emojis because that's my love language. So I guess we'll just have to guess what's more. So that's a computer, just so you know. Okay, so this was my abstract that I submitted for my talk, and as I was writing my talk, I was having a really difficult time writing this because it was super boring. And I was I had 45 minutes, and I had no idea how I was going to talk about this. Especially, and then I started spending some time thinking about what the best talks I've been to have been, and they've all been stories. So I'm going to try to tell a story tonight. And here's what I'm going to talk about when I do that. We spend a lot of time talking about me. And then I'm going to talk about design and development. We'll talk about pairing. We'll talk about working together. And this is how I'm going to talk about it. First, I'm going to go over motivations. And that's motivations for describing hybrid pairing and why I wanted to talk about this subject in the first place. And then I will actually talk about what hybrid pairing is. Finally, I'll go over implementation, not finally, and some considerations. And spoiler alert, most of the talk is about motivations. So, like I said, I'm going to talk about all the stuff that was in my abstract, but first I'm going to talk about me. So for motivations, I'm going to talk about personal experience, and then I'm going to talk about feminized labor. Ooh, yeah, fun. And then I'm going to talk about so I'm just situating myself a little bit so you learn a little bit more about me. This is also very heavily emoji centered. So yes, I'm from Los Angeles. I live in Chicago now. I moved here for college and left, but then came back. I went to community college for a little bit. I took a year off from university, and that's where I learned how to program in C++. And it's a really great experience, and those were the best teachers I ever had. So that's a lot to get that way. I ended up coming back here, going to university, getting a bachelor's degree in gender, art, and media. I am queer. Okay, well, that's a Pakistani flag. I'm a white passing woman of color. I'm disabled. and I'm kind of nervous. I just wanted to address all of those things because I don't know how many people here like fit with those attributes. So I do too. Right now, I work at a company called DataMade. Super awesome. We're a small software consultancy. We are all developers. And by small, I mean 7 people. We work with civic-minded organizations like nonprofits, university research centers, and local governments. And we specialize in making messy data and helpful. We've done a couple of high-profile projects like the snow tracker to see if your streets are clean. Turns out Alderman Burke pulled some strings to make sure his street was swept more often.
No relation.
So before I was at DataMate, I wanted to be a million different things. These are some of them. Right, I was watching Stargate, and I thought it'd be super cool if I could just design the UI for all the spaceships. I thought I would be a user experience designer. I thought about maybe getting a PhD in computer science, and also gender and computers. I just like that. And a product manager because I kind of wanted to do everything, and I thought maybe that's what product managers do. And when I was applying for jobs at the end of college, I had a bunch of different resumes because I had a bunch of different experience, and there wasn't really anything that felt like it fit me. So yeah, so I had data. I had 2 different developer ones. Unclear what the second underscore is for. I have the news one when I was applying for journalism jobs. And for when I was applying for software, which is different from developer. Why I was so scattered, I tried to think about it, and part of it is I'm definitely like super into controlling things, and I really like to have input at a bunch of different levels. But when I really thought about it, it was that I cared about design and development, and I wasn't willing to give one up for the other. And there weren't really that many opportunities or industries where I could treat both of those roles equally. So I'm still figuring out how to handle this. But I'm going to talk a little bit about my experiences. So I tried a couple of different things. I worked as a video game developer for a while at a social activism company. I worked in graphics journalism, which is all of those charts and interactives you see on news sites like NPR or New York Times. I worked as a UX designer at a data visualization agency. That was like a pure design role. And I ended up working as a machine learning researcher for a bit. So I've really been all over the map. But I definitely am always interested in interactive data visualization. I've done all of that in all of these. So I'm going to talk about my experience with UX design and machine learning research. So I interned at a data viz agency. All they did was design data visualizations. I loved it. It was great. I contributed to several projects like this one that maps childcare deficits across the United States for Center for American Progress. I'm really proud of it. I think we made a lot of really beautiful work that was informative as well. But working only on design projects day after day made me tired and sad. I really missed cooking. My internship project, I ended up making it all about dead Disney parents. Why are there so many of them? There's a lot. And that's just the mom. And I also only did animated Disney films. I didn't do any of those Disney Channel originated movies. That would really raise this. But I did this as my sort of internship capstone because I really wanted to code. And that was really the only way I was going to be able to do it for 3 months in DC in the summer. So after that experience, fresh in my mind, I totally swung in the opposite direction and really leaned into the data and data visualization. I found a job at a machine learning lab. I didn't really end up contributing much to the research, but it let me experience like data science and machine learning, and I thought it was really cool. And I thought it might be something I want to pursue. And I wanted to program all the time. But while I was at the lab, I realized that I had an upper limit. And that limit came when I was tasked to work on our website, which still does look like this, because I didn't actually work on it. Yeah, the limit is things being ugly. I really care a lot about beauty in products, in visualizations, in the way people interact with things. Um, and that has hindered my work a little bit. And also, yeah, what does it mean? And it also, at its core, it means I always care about how people use whatever it is I make. I think a lot of people do on certain levels. I think maybe I just care more. I always feel like I've done my best work when somebody is able to interact with something I've made and it serves the purpose that they need it to do. So that means I care about how they feel when they use the product. If they're frustrated, if they can't click the buttons, if it's not mobile optimized. I care about making it aesthetically pleasing. I care about design work. I care about clients thinking, wow, that looks really slick. I want to hire this person. And I care about how easy it is to use. I mentioned frustration, but also just people should be able to understand what it is within seconds of seeing the site. So for instance, I could be really proud of data analysis I do, but if it's not presented in a way that's informative to the user, and yes, pretty, then it really doesn't feel like an accomplishment to me. So in other words, I care about design, which is a very broad term I'm going to talk about a little bit. This is also what is beauty. And this is sort of how I've defined beauty in this context, and that's making something pleasant to interact with. It's also visual design, but not necessarily just visual design. It's also interaction design, user experience design, and a good design always uplifts a product, and bad design is a disservice to everyone who works to present their work to the world. And there's also the idea that good design, you won't see it if you know it, because it won't. All your interactions will be seamless. So now, in our tech world, how do we achieve beauty? There are 4 different disciplines that all sort of interact with this, and that's user research, user experience, visual or interactive design, and then front-end development. So user research is where you interview people. Who's going to be using your product? What is their problem? What are you trying to solve with whatever you're creating? Are you even creating the right thing? How do they go about solving the problem normally in their everyday life? So it's a lot of talking to people and very open-ended questions, right? Like, tell me about your day, not like, was your day good? Or how was your day? Things like that. Open questions. And then also observation, being able to watch someone do something without interfering and being able to take notes and understand and then synthesize that information. So the skills are, I would say, listening and interpersonal communication. So for user experience, the techniques are wireframes, sketching and user journeys. And that really involves planning out interactions, which is a very specific skill. And also synthesizing all of that user research into something that is tangible. And then there's visual and interactive design. So that's, you're using tools like Photoshop, something like that, in order to create a mock-up of what the site looks like without it being interactive. You can work on prototypes that way. And so things that are important for a visual designer is a strong sense of typography, color theory, and overall just a good eye for design. Now, front-end development implements those designs, right? So you use things like JavaScript, HTML, CSS, maybe use React. And for that, it's rapid iteration is important for prototypes, especially when we're talking about agile processes. There's also a lot of small computations done and like moving your div like 2 pixels. And also balance on the page, balancing elements, things like that. So there are a lot of ways that beauty can be achieved. And I really care about beauty and design. And I had a conversation with a coworker. We were both pairing on a tricky layout issue, working with some Ajax. We finally figured it out. And so I started to make some adjustments. And he said, like, okay, you got it. I hate all that CSS stuff. So, quick summary. Jasmine cares about design. Jasmine wants something to be designed well. Jasmine has design skills. Jasmine should design it. And if I do design it, it is about responsibility. It is stepping up to the plate. It's taking on extra work for a better project or product that I know nobody's going to do. And also, when you care about design and know how to code, people are going to push you to front end because it just makes sense. Yeah, but maybe I don't want to do all of that. So, yeah, CSS sucks, man. Like, sorry, I know some people like it, but I'm really bad at it. Right? Like, I use Sass, and that has eased the burden somewhat, and I can make cool things with CSS, but I never really enjoy it. And it's, I mean, I do a little bit. I don't hate it. And I do love JavaScript. I use D3 all the time. I've also like openly wept over JavaScript. Yeah, in this instance, the reason I was doing this is because it bothered me when the elements looked scattered, if the text was too difficult to read, too small, if there were trailing orphans on paragraphs, that's bad form, learned that from journalism. And I wanted it to be beautiful. And it clearly wasn't my coworker's priority, and it was nobody else's, so it became mine. But by caring about it, I started to do it, and I learned how to do it. And I thought that, right, maybe I was destined to be a UX designer, like I have an affinity for this. But when I did do that, I was unhappy because I wasn't coding. And while I do enjoy design work, I don't want it to be the only thing I end up doing. And beyond personal preference, there are multiple reasons I'm working for that. So all of these words, like listening, fonts, colors, all of these things, understanding needs, balance, all those things are sort of associated with the kind of labor that women do. It's feminine coded, like very emotional, right, for user research. You're like listening to people, understanding their problem. And this is a very large problem for me. This quote is from a great article called JavaScript is for Girls by Miriam Posner. And she talks about the difference between front end and back end. And for this, she's talking more about the idea of like getting women into the pipeline. And the pipeline isn't the problem. Because if you get a bunch of women in the pipeline, you teach them how to code with HTML, CSS, which is the most accessible thing because on any web page, you can just like inspect elements. You're then devaluing the work because women are entering it. It's a really weird self-perpetuating cycle. And yeah, soft, fuzzy things that women are supposed to excel at. So how does this manifest in the real world? And that's this person, Kelly Ellis, ended up suing Google along with a couple of other people. Their case was thrown out, I believe. And one of the things that this person talked about was that they were forced into front-end roles because of their gender. And almost all of the back-end developers were male. And that really stunted career growth. And there are many other anecdotes. There isn't really, at least that I was able to find, there isn't a lot of great data about like front-end versus back-end or what technologies there are based on gender. Stack Overflow does like their survey every year, but I don't think chronically intercount marginalized genders. It's really only people that use Stack Overflow, which isn't everyone who doesn't want to take the survey. So there are a lot of anecdotes about people being shepherded into front-end or full-stack roles. Or in the article that Miriam had written, there's an anecdote about someone applying for a back-end job, and then it ended up being a full-stack job. And then it was a front-end job, and they were rejected because they didn't have front-end experience. Also, recruiters only reach out sometimes about front-end positions. And also, technical decisions on the back-end are dismissed. So another way this manifests is through, So these are all from Glassdoor. This is a web developer in Chicago. This is the average front-end developer, a developer, and then a back-end developer. And right, these are all very high numbers for someone to make a year, but That is an incredible difference. This one is from Robert Hatt. It's a salary guide. So if you're a web designer, say on like a creative team, if you're on a team of designers, you make $83,000. If you're a front-end web developer, $97,000. Web developer, $123,000. Again, very large numbers, mind-boggling numbers, but there's an enormous difference between them. And so now I feel, you know, not only am I struggling with balancing this design and development work, I feel like there's the added pressure of what I want my career to look like. Because when I end up taking more of this design work, I'll be the front-end person, and I'll keep doing that. And the way specialties are more stratified, my work will be seen as less valuable, and then I won't be compensated fairly. So, by being one of the few people who do like it and do care about it, it does become most of my work. I'm worried that like the databases and frameworks that I want to learn will be on the back burner, that like more and more of my time is spent doing things I already know how to do, and that my learning will plateau much faster. I acknowledge that I don't work at a place that has design leadership, so maybe if there were a career ladder, I'd feel differently. But right now, that's not the case. And yes, I do love design, and I do love design work. I really love digging into data and figuring out the best way for someone to understand it. I really like listening to people's needs and finding a solution. I like slick interfaces. I really like helping a colleague with a tricky design problem. It's fun until it becomes all I do, and then there isn't the space to skill of other developers, and then it's all just me. And this is my last login. No, it's not. Anyway, never mind. Anyway, there isn't a way to get these developers to care about CSS if I'm doing CSS all the time. So how do we change this? Okay, I'm actually going to talk about hybrid pairing now. So hybrid pairing is what I am just thinking of. Hybrid people like me who do design and development, or working with a design and development, and a designer and a developer, or someone who's a mix of the two, pairing with somebody who's more on the development side. I thought about design pairing, but that's actually a term that specifically means like two different designers working on a design problem together, usually from like different disciplines. So this seemed more appropriate. So what I was thinking about was the lead developer on a project I'm on. We're sitting next to each other. We use this tool called mockups. Really easy to put in prototypes. She was sitting next to me, and she was making changes, and I was like very quickly moving them. And it occurred to me that, you know, it was pairing. I was like, holy shit, this is pairing. Because I was driving and she was navigating. And I started to become more vocal about wanting that more because it felt like we were working together. And I also felt like that person then knew how difficult these decisions were, and they had to make them themselves. So I used I used driver and navigator. So the driver, this person knows all the Illustrator shortcuts, and then that allows the navigator to focus on the big picture and really like tackle some of those decisions that they might have taken for granted or just never thought about before. So again, the solution is hybrid pairing. So here are some advantages to it. One, speedier iteration because it eliminates a level of communication. I don't need to put together these wireframes myself, have them approved by my manager, ask for a change, go back. We can sit there and do it together. And if we are consulting, that takes just as much time to build. There's continuous learning involved. Someone told me that developers learn by being uncomfortable, and they're specifically talking about programming languages, which is the only case I think that applies in. So if someone doesn't like CSS, program with someone who knows about padding. They shouldn't just be avoiding it because they don't like it, especially when it is at the disadvantage of their other, possibly younger, marginalized workers. This one is more of a hypothesis, but I feel like if more people participate in different aspects of the product, feel a greater sense of ownership. They'll be more invested, have more responsibility. Hopefully there'll be more pride. And hopefully they'll just be happier about that. So there are a couple of different considerations about this approach. You need to be aware of what software you're going to use. It can be mock-ups, balsamic, or you could just be using Bootstrap front end. But the idea is that it's something that's easy, quick, and can be changed very rapidly. This is best for mid-fidelity. It's not great for sketching or wireframing when you're kind of tackling that piece of synthesizing the user research. That's a lot to throw someone into who has never done sort of any design work before. So it's best when you're working on something that is close to the finished product, the finished product that the developer will see because they've been working on it. Power dynamics. I spent a lot of time talking about that encoded labor, and these biases can easily come into a pairing session. You should discuss how the pairing goes before, perhaps with a zine, and establish. It's very important to establish that both people are experts in their own discipline, and they're equals. This person knows more about design than the developer. The developer probably knows more about some of this than the designer. That doesn't make one better than the other. So large companies. I work, like I said, at a really small consulting firm. Everyone is full stack. It might not be as valuable at large companies where there's like a design team and a developer team that manage differently. In that case, I think on a development team, like front end and back end pairing is also useful. I've worked a lot of weird different jobs, but I've never worked at a place where I was just a developer working with a designer. And so that's kind of where I am, why I've kind of come to this conclusion. And I might have different opinions if that were the case. Consulting. Right, we bill per hour per person, two people pairing. At least like my company doesn't care all 100% of the time, and we don't have an apprenticeship model that kind of works in pay scale. So it is twice the number of hours, and maybe there are different rates, and that can like sort of perpetuate like inequality. And that really needs to be discussed beforehand. I think you would save time because, like I said earlier, you eliminate that sort of communication layer, but it will take some time to learn how to do it. So I've thrown a lot of information at you. And the point is that you want all of your developers to value design. And everyone does. Everybody knows how much it sucks when your app crashes and like you can't do something really simple. We've all had that experience. And also like when you see good visual design as well, you can see it and know it. And it can seem unattainable for people who don't have that experience, but it really isn't. With hybrid pairing, working together, everyone's work can be valued.